Again, here we go again. Caitlyn is out minding her business. She out working on her golf swing at Michael Jordan's private golf course, doing her thing, not bothering nobody. Caitlyn Clark is not bothering nobody. And here we have another hating WNBA player being a flat out liar and a hater, and we gotta call them out and hold their feet to the fire. This is
Nasty work. So, a teammate of Paige Bueckers just went on social media and a podcast, taking some totally unprovoked shots at Caitlyn Clark. She actually claimed that Paige has this killer instinct that Caitlyn supposedly lacks. And get this, the player saying all this only averages 7 points a game. Naturally, the backlash was immediate. The claims were pretty obviously false, and now the internet is making sure she really regrets opening her mouth. This is some peak WNBA drama. Why do you think WNBA players keep using Caitlyn Clark's name just for attention, especially when she's literally minding her own business and not bothering anyone?
Antwort.
Das denke ich mir. Für mich ja auch.
PB5, Paige Bueckers.
Muss man sagen, denke ich mir. Da sind die Loyalitäten zu stark. Caitlyn Clark oder Paige Bueckers?
So, this little take here that she had, bruh, sparked a lot of stuff online. She even carried on, and I believe she got in the comments.
Look, let's establish exactly who we're talking about here, because context is everything. We're talking about Louisa Geel Soder. She's a German center for the Dallas Wings, and yep, she's Paige Bueckers' teammate. She decided that going on a podcast and then doubling down on Instagram to criticize Caitlyn Clark was somehow a smart career move. This player was a second-round pick back in 2020. Last season, she averaged 7 points and 5 rebounds. Now, those aren't terrible numbers or anything, but they're definitely not the resume of someone who should be out here trying to diminish what Caitlyn Clark has accomplished, you know, the player who honestly pretty much saved the WNBA's relevance. Yet, here we are, seeing another player who directly benefits from Caitlyn's impact choosing public disrespect.
Louisa G, that plays for the Dallas Wings, Paige Bueckers' teammate, felt the need to go on Instagram and take shots at Caitlyn Clark to try to uplift Paige Bueckers. You can uplift Paige Bueckers without talking about Caitlyn Clark. You could do that. She wants to go play Captain Saver for Paige Bueckers based on fans' opinion, and she wants to go take shots at Caitlyn Clark on Instagram. Then she goes on a podcast and
The thing is, the whole situation kicked off on a podcast called The Journey. The host asked Louisa a classic, loaded question, choose between Caitlyn Clark and Paige Bueckers. But here's what's crazy, when you get asked a question like that, you can totally just decline to answer. Or, you could give a really diplomatic response, right? Something that acknowledges both players' strengths without stirring up any drama. But apparently, that option just didn't occur to Louisa. Instead, she went full defense mode for Paige and, at the same time, took direct shots at Caitlyn. What's more, the podcast was in another language. She probably thought American fans wouldn't catch wind of what she said, which honestly might have been strategic. Wrong. The internet finds absolutely everything, translates everything, and amplifies everything, especially when Caitlyn Clark is involved.
Caitlyn Clark fans basically saying the reasoning for them liking Caitlyn over Paige is Caitlyn's killer instinct. So I'm gonna be bringing these up piece by piece because the site was kind of slow. But listen, here it says, Louisa G blasted a Caitlyn Clark fan's take claiming that Paige Bueckers lacked killer instinct in her game. The Dallas Wings center made a guest appearance on the Journey podcast.
But Louisa didn't stop with just the podcast. Oh no, she took it straight to Instagram. And that's where this whole thing went from questionable to just absolutely wild. Fans started pointing out that one of the big reasons many prefer Caitlyn over Paige is Caitlyn's undeniable killer instinct, that competitive edge that just shows up in crucial moments. And Louisa felt she just had to respond. Hers was truly next-level delusional. She wrote, and I'm quoting directly here, Caitlyn Clark is definitely an important part of the revolution in women's basketball. Definitely not the only one, though. Paige Bueckers has a killer instinct. I can confirm 100. So, let's unpack just how wrong literally every single part of that statement is.
About Louisa's opinion. They swarmed the post comment section with their take on Wing Star's opinions and on Bueckers Clark matchup. One fan gave Fever Garden upper hand in the matchup. It says Caitlin Clark is revolutionizing women's basketball right now. Paige Bueckers is extremely good, but without killer instinct, one fan said.
Okay, first, let's hit that definitely not the only one part. Honestly, that's like the classic move insecure people make when someone else's success just makes them uncomfortable. Sure, technically, other players contribute to women's basketball. Nobody's saying Caitlin is the only player in the entire league. But when we're talking about who actually revolutionized the sport, who brought in unprecedented attention and money, who sold out arenas left and right, making casual sports fans care about the WNBA for the first time, that's overwhelmingly one person. Think about it. The ratings literally dropped 55% when Caitlin was sidelined during the playoffs. 55%, that's not she's one of many contributors. That is, she is the single biggest factor in the league's recent success. For Louisa to try and minimize that, that's either pure ignorance or just flat-out dishonesty. Plus, then there's the claim that Paige Bueckers has killer instinct, which Louisa can confirm 100% from live experience. Okay, so you played against Paige, and she competed hard. Cool, right? Nobody's saying Paige isn't competitive or doesn't want to win. But killer instinct, that's not just trying hard. It's delivering in the absolute biggest moments under the most intense pressure, time and time again. It's about taking and making those shots that matter most when everyone's watching and everything's on the line, and while Paige has had some incredible moments, she's also had plenty of times where she seemed to disappear when her team needed her most. That's not hate, it's just an observation. Meanwhile, Caitlin literally built her entire reputation on hitting impossible shots in crucial moments and carrying her team when nobody else could. The comparison isn't even close. What's more, the entire situation becomes even more absurd when you consider who's making these statements. Louisa Geel Soder plays for the Dallas Wings. Last season, they finished with a 9-31 record. They had the third lowest attendance in the entire WNBA. Paige Bueckers, for all her talent, couldn't move that needle. The team struggled, attendance was terrible, and there was zero buzz around Dallas basketball. Compare that to Caitlin Clark, who was selling out every arena she played in, even opponent arenas, generating record television ratings and creating a cultural phenomenon around women's basketball. So, when Louisa tries to argue it's not just Caitlin revolutionizing the sport, the obvious question is, where were all these other so-called contributors when attendance and ratings were terrible before Caitlin arrived? And get this, the timing of this drama is super suspect. Caitlin wasn't out there doing interviews, talking trash about the WNBA, or shading other players. She was literally playing golf at Michael Jordan's private club, working on her game during the offseason, just minding her own business. She wasn't starting beef. She wasn't shading anyone on social media. She wasn't doing anything except existing and being excellent at what she does. Yet somehow, that was still too much for Louisa to handle without feeling the need to take these completely unprovoked shots. That tells you everything about the insecurity and jealousy that still plagues certain corners of the WNBA. Look, the fan reaction to Louisa's comments was swift and brutal, and frankly, it should have been. People absolutely flooded her Instagram post, pointing out how ridiculous it was for a second-round pick who averages 7 points to try and diminish the accomplishments of someone who was already a generational talent. Others pointed out that Louisa is only even relevant enough to have this conversation because Caitlin elevated the entire league's profile. Without Caitlin's impact, Louisa would be playing to even smaller crowds and in even more obscurity. The irony of biting the hand that feeds you while simultaneously claiming it's not actually feeding you is apparently lost on some people. What's truly frustrating about situations like this is the pattern it represents. This isn't the first time a WNBA player has felt the need to use Caitlin Clark's name for attention or relevance. It's become a reliable strategy: say something controversial about Caitlin, get immediate engagement in headlines, then either double down or claim you were misunderstood. The problem is, this strategy only works because Caitlin is so much bigger than everyone else that mere association with her name drives traffic in conversation. The podcast appearance and Instagram comments got attention specifically because she mentioned Caitlin. Without that connection, nobody would really care what she thinks about Paige Bueckers, or anything else for that matter. The claim that Paige has killer instinct, which Louisa can confirm from live experience, is especially laughable when you consider their actual head-to-head history. When Paige and Caitlyn have gone up against each other, Caitlyn has consistently been the better player. She's put up bigger numbers, made more crucial plays, and, yes, demonstrated that killer instinct everyone's debating. So, what exactly is Louisa confirming? That Paige tries hard? Okay, great. So does literally every professional athlete. That's the baseline. It's not some special distinction that proves she has the same competitive fire as Caitlyn. Another angle that just makes this whole situation ridiculous is the Dallas Wings' complete lack of success. If Paige Bueckers really had this undeniable killer instinct that makes her comparable to or better than Caitlyn Clark, wouldn't the Wings have been better than a 9-31 team? Wouldn't attendance have been higher? Wouldn't there have been more buzz and excitement around the franchise? The fact that none of those things happen suggests that maybe, just maybe, Paige isn't actually on Caitlyn's level. Regardless of what her teammates want to claim, results matter, and the results overwhelmingly favor one player over the other. This mentality is also particularly toxic because it's rooted in a denial of reality. Yes, team success requires multiple contributors. Yes, the WNBA benefits when multiple players are playing well and generating interest. But pretending that everyone's contribution is equal, when the data clearly shows otherwise, is just dishonest. Caitlyn Clark's impact on television ratings, attendance, merchandise sales, and cultural relevance is measurably greater than any other player's. Acknowledging that isn't disrespectful to other players. It's just stating facts. But apparently, some players would rather lie to themselves and their fans than accept an uncomfortable truth. What makes Louisa's comments even more frustrating is that they were totally unnecessary. Nobody was attacking Paige Bueckers. Fans were simply explaining why they prefer Caitlyn. And one of the reasons they cited was killer instinct. That's not a personal attack on Paige. That's a factual observation about differences in playing style and mentality. But Louisa decided to interpret it as disrespect that required a response. In doing so, she actually created way more negative attention for Paige than the original comments ever did. Now, instead of just a few fans discussing playing styles, you have a full-blown controversy where people are analyzing Paige's career and pointing out all the ways she doesn't quite measure up to Caitlyn. Great job defending your teammate, Louisa. The broader issue here is that the WNBA continues to have a Caitlyn Clark problem, and that problem is entirely self-created. Instead of embracing the player who's bringing unprecedented attention and money to the league, certain players seem determined to minimize her impact and drag her down. It's the same energy that led to the physical targeting during her rookie season, the same energy that led to players complaining about the attention she received, and the same energy that now has Paige Bueckers' teammate out here lying about killer instinct on podcasts and Instagram. At some point, these players need to ask themselves whether this strategy is actually helping them or just making them look petty and insecure. The fact that Louisa thought this was a good idea also raises serious questions about judgment and media training. Did nobody in the WNBA organization pull her aside and say, hey, maybe don't go on podcasts talking negatively about the most popular player in the league? Did her agent not explain that creating controversy around Caitlyn Clark only generates negative attention for yourself, because fans will inevitably point out all the ways you don't measure up? The lack of strategic thinking here is almost as bad as the dishonesty itself. Even if Louisa genuinely believes what she said, which seems unlikely, there's zero upside to saying it publicly. Looking at this situation from Caitlyn's perspective, it must be totally exhausting. She can't just exist and work on her game during the offseason without someone, somewhere, deciding they need to take shots at her to defend someone else. She didn't ask for the comparisons. She didn't start the conversation about killer instinct. She's literally just out here being great at basketball and living her life. Yet somehow, that's still too threatening for certain people to handle without feeling the need to diminish her accomplishments. That says way more about them than it does about Caitlyn. The instant regret part of this situation comes from the fact that Louisa's comments accomplished absolutely nothing positive and generated massive backlash. She didn't successfully defend Paige because the arguments were just too weak to be convincing. She didn't elevate her own profile, except as someone who made foolish comments. She didn't change anyone's mind about Caitlyn's impact or importance. All she did was ensure that more people are now comparing Paige and Caitlyn directly, which only makes the gap between them even more obvious. If the goal was to help Paige's reputation, this spectacularly backfired. So, Paige Bueckers' teammate decided talking trash about Caitlyn Clark was a smart move, and the internet immediately reminded her why that's always a terrible idea.